teenage fathers. What happened after you found out she was pregnant and what is your life like now? I used to be a court-appointed collector of child support debt. Being 20 and calling up on people the same age as me or younger was awful. Having them ask like, all paraphrased, wait, I have to pay for this kid. Yup, legally required to until they're 20 but I'm only 17 now and I'll be paying for this kid for longer than I've been alive. That's right. You can either do it yourself or we will garnish your paychecks. You don't pay and we take you to court for the money. You don't pay then and we throw you in jail and then afterwards you still have to pay. Was 17. Terrified. Was going to adopt but went to the hospital when he was born and made the most awkward phone call to my parents to explain the situation. Mother left after the first year. Raised him solo after that. He turns 11 next month. Wouldn't change anything. He's in school and I have my career sorted out. Glad there's so many happy endings in here. I was freaked out having a kid at 29, so props to everyone for being there for your kid. No one's going to reply saying I pretended it wasn't mine and tried to get out of paying child support, even though that can happen. So many teen mothers are single parents. Was 17. Panicked as crap. I lived in Ontario and she was in central Saskatchewan. I sold all of my crap, saved up a buttload of money, had a job and an apartment, secured my phone and fax. No jokes, 1999, and moved out there. B was lying. I told my parents crying and they had to figure out a way to simultaneously scold me and comfort me. I tried to help her prepare for the baby but I spiraled into major depression and alcoholism. It was bad. After I decided not to be a horrible person, I begged the mother to let me back in our daughter's life. It worked out wonderfully because my daughter is 18 now and raising her has been the best part of my life. It was difficult but ultimately I am very, very glad it happened. I'm glad that everything worked out for you. I hope you and your daughter are doing good, as well as the mother. 32 now. Found out at 16 was gonna be a father. Still with the mother, have 2 more kids and still smashing like teenagers. 18 when my son was born. Split up a year after and still shared parenting. Became friends again at 23 and fell in love again and got married. Been married 8 years and expecting our 4th and final child in July. We have 3 boys. This is our first girl. Although it was not perfect, we wouldn't change the way it all happened. 4th and final child. Well, now you've jinxed it. A friend of mine is a teen dad. His baby was born a few months ago and he is a decent dad. But when he found out that she was pregnant he went off the rails. Alcohol, drugs, dangerous behavior. He was scared and he blamed her. I hope he's doing well now. My cousin is currently 8 months pregnant and I know nothing about the father and if he is even going to be a part of the baby's life. It's kind of scary. Well, I was 18. Not even graduated high school. Starting the typical peak phase of life. I had a beautiful GF. Varsity captain of the lacrosse team. Something out of a TV show type crap. Then of course I knocked her up. The scariest moment of my life. I didn't tell me parents first. I told my coach. He was a role model for me and honestly I knew I could trust him. He calmed me down and convinced me my parents needed to know. So I told my dad and he was so freaking livid. I broke down because I've had my butt chewed out and even beat, but the crap he said at that moment just fricked me up. But I grew past it. Fast forward, after graduation she's about 4 months pregnant. I decided I need to back off school for a second and I joined the union. I poured concrete all summer and busted my butt to end up at about $35 an hour. But I wanted to finish my education. I tried working on my associates but money got tight and I got back to work. I'm currently working as my kid is 4 months old now. I'm 19. My own place, with a good credit score. About to go back to school and buy my first house. I may be lucky or something IDK, but honestly this kid is my life. And with how much I partied and did party drugs before my kid, I think having my baby boy might have saved my life. It definitely made it better. I was 17 and my wife was 16 when we had our first son. I can still remember the midwife saying that we were kids having kids. We're still together and now have 3 sons, 31, 28, and 22, a grandson and 3 granddaughters, and I still love the woman as much as ever. There will be some hard times, but just remember nothing lasts forever and things get easier over time. It's a daunting prospect becoming a young parent, but it can bring you so much pleasure and joy that the good times vastly outweigh the bad. And I now sit back and watch friends bringing young children up and think I'm so glad I did it when I was young. I don't think I've got the energy these days, lol. This is how I know I'm getting older. People in this thread aren't much older than me talking about their grandkids. Not me, but my dad. My dad was 17 when he found out I existed because a friend told him that his one night stand had his kid and was in a different part of the country. He dropped everything, hopped in his car and drove about 14 hours. I was already about 3 months by then. He looked for me and my mom for a while before finally finding us. She was 16. She was addicted to drugs. For the next 3 years it was a rocky ride for him and me. My mom would take me wherever and leave me. She still had custody because the courts are a joke. Eventually my dad and grandmother, 35 at the time, won me. After that my dad put aside his thug life, mostly, went to university and got a degree, and started dating my stepmother. From a near criminal to her engineering degree graduate. I don't talk to my mom. I don't even know or care if she is alive. She gave me the potential for mental illness, then made sure I would get it through a scarring childhood. She has 3 other kids, 2 of which I don't know. My half sister is bipolar and suffers a lot. But her dad 2 years ago got custody and has been making her life better. Anything that woman touches she destroys. She sure destroyed me. I know what crack houses are like. Been there as a kid. I would have preferred personally if it just died when I was born 3 months early, nearly dead for all the mental illness I've dealt with to get to this point. But I am still here, and I am taking control of this life one step at a time. But what my father has done for me, I will never forget that, or take it lightly. Even now, I'm in college studying computer science after being laid off from my full-time job, and he basically pushed me and my stuff back into his house. No rent, buying me stuff, feeding me, for anything and everything he has wrong with himself. For all his anger issues that seep through when he's under stress, which can cause him to be quite grumpy. For his gambling problems that he is still working on. For his addiction to cigarettes and his functional alcohol problem. He puts my own life and his other 2 children's lives above his like a father should. My brother and sister are both doing a lot better than I was at their ages. I don't know how I would still be alive without him. Him and his dedication to me. Not exactly from the point of a teenage father, but I thought it was a good contribution to the post regardless. I was 16 and she was 17. Told my parents first. Quit football and got a job after school instead. Girlfriend moves after her graduation. Now, it's 8 years after the pregnancy. We're 6 years married and 10 years total together. We had 2 more kids and live happily and comfortable. I work. We have a house, 2 cars, act. With how it started, I think everything worked itself out alright. Hey, I'm relevant. I was 19 when my at the time girlfriend of 2 months got pregnant. My parents freaked out. Her dad threatened to kill me. The expected response from parents, I guess. I'm no storyteller. So how did it work out? I'm now 28, married with 3 beautiful children with the same woman. I love her ups and her downs with every part of my soul. My eyes bulged at the sight of girlfriend of 2 months. Glad everything worked out. My dad had me at 12. He stuck by me. He raised me. He did everything. He's been our sole source of income half my life. He gave up on school. No way he could afford it. He'll be 17 in under a month and I think he's done great. Thought my life was over and I was going to become exactly the person I told myself I would never be. She miscarried. Now I'm gay. My ex didn't miscarry, but otherwise, same. I was 18. She was 17. I joined the Marines, married her and we did it upright for a time. At 20 we had our second. I got traded out of the Corps, left the Marines and landed what had become a pretty good career. At 13 years of marriage, we realized how far apart we had grown. Well, she realized it first. We divorced. There were some tough times, but eventually we got over ourselves and each other and now we co-parent our kids as best we can. My oldest is 18 now. He's in his first college of choice. My youngest is 16 and doing dual enrollment of high school and college. I think we did okay. On vacation with my daughter now. It was rough for the first 7 years through divorce and custody issues. All worth it. She's incredible and I can't imagine life without her. 23 now. I found out my then girlfriend of 3 years was pregnant on my birthday. I threw up, but that was mostly because I had the flu. Luckily I had just gone through army basic training and ate, so I had a job lined up. We got married and moved out to my duty station, and 4 years later with 2 kids I couldn't be happier. Wasn't a teenage but 22. The mom was 17. I'm now a single dad of a 7-year-old son and started seeing a psychiatrist for my depression. Don't be a father because you think it's the right thing to do. Do it because you want to, otherwise you will live a life full of regrets. I was 19. She was 22. I dropped out of college to get a second job and get us a place to live. We were living with a friend at the time. We got married 6 months after my son was born. Now I'm 29. Have 2 amazing sons and have been divorced for almost 2 years. Ex-wife decided to walk out on us and started another family. I'm back in school and life is actually pretty good. This is a great question. I grew up with and dated a guy for a short time when I was a teenager. He had a young baby with a girl he'd dated previously. After we broke up he continued to date and impregnate girls. I actually consider myself a narrow miss. He has children with a few women. The oldest child is probably almost 30 by now. About 10 years ago I had him on Facebook for a short time and he didn't seem to be doing very well in life. Substance abuse problems. No real prospects. It's pretty sad because he had so much potential. I thought about him a lot over the years, thinking that he must have pulled his crap together. But nope. I lost my virginity and got my girlfriend preggers the same time. I was 17. She was 14. It was hard. Kids that age have no business making babies. The first couple years, I basically ignored it. I just didn't know how to deal with it. This was in 1988. I finally came around and participated in being a parent. We never got married, but we never went to court. I paid my child support. She could have gotten more. I got to see my daughter anytime I wanted. I was very lucky in that regard. She just turned 28 and she did everything right. She's now RN, with a bachelor's in nursing, married to a great guy. She makes me proud. Life is great now, but it's really hard when you can barely support yourself and trying to build a career. I may have finished school if it hadn't happened. I wouldn't recommend doing it. It's a long road. Not me, but my stepdad. Had my stepbrother when he was in high school. They aren't really close. They never lived together. After he graduated, my dad joined the army. To make this more complicated, I was the first kid to live with my stepdad and mom, but was the youngest of 3. Growing pains happened because both my mom and dad were military, so they weren't used to having a kid year round. I joined the army after I graduated, and that's when my dad and I got closer. Before that, it wasn't that we didn't see eye to eye. It was more of he treated me like one of his soldiers. Now he and I are really close. His actual son doesn't really talk to him. They talk more now than they did before, but I think it could be better. I had only known her 30 days when we found out she was pregnant. Originally we had decided abortion was the way to go since we were both so young, 18. But I quickly changed my mind and told her I support her either way, but if she was willing I wanted to give us a chance. She was willing. We were married 3 months later. Her and my daughter are on the couch playing ukulele right now. That was 18 years ago. Her dad threatened to chop my hands off, so I sold drugs until I could afford the abortion. I'm a responsible adult who just bought a house in the suburbs. Still got my hands. My girlfriend and I were 17 when we found out she was pregnant. We were very scared and discussed aborting because we both had pretty lofty dreams we wanted to pursue. She wanted to be a surgeon and I wanted to act, but I ultimately talked her out of it. We ended up having a little girl, got married, and 3 years later we had a son. It was tough initially because her mother had passed away and her father wasn't in the picture, but we made it work. I went to school for advertising and she managed to juggle parenting and veterinary school. She's a very strong woman and quite respected in her field. Everything seemed perfect until my wife's father suddenly came back into the picture and started taking my son on all these harebrained sci-fi adventures. Now I don't have a job, the Galactic Federation collapsed, and I'm on the verge of divorce. So life lesson: if you get your girlfriend pregnant on prom night, try to relax, even though it's a paradox, and find out if you live the dimension where both her parents are dead. My man. I'm a teen dad, got my GF at the time pregnant. We were both 18, almost 19. We had been together for a couple of years, and so we find out she's pregnant and I decided to marry her and stick around to raise my child, and now he is almost 2 and I enjoy every moment of being dad. My mom was 16 when she had me. She was also a drug addict, and by the time I was 4 things fell apart with my parents. My mom hooked up with a 35-year truck driver and ran off with him, and my dad, who was 19 when I was born, lost his mind a little bit and took off for a while too. Luckily I had the best grandparents and aunt you could ever ask for, so I was well taken care of. Eventually my dad got his crap together, remarried and got me back. I reunited with my mom as a teenager after being in a long abuse relationship and was skinny as a rail from being hooked on crack for 11 years. It took a while, but she got healthy and we're still close to this day. She never forgave herself for doing that to me and struggles with the guilt to this day. But despite all that, I still love my mama. Always have. Oh boy, am I an butthole. Was 17 and girlfriend was around 19 or so. We found out when we were going to a doctor's appointment to be prescribed those anti-baby pills, but funny enough we were maybe 2 weeks too late when the nurse came in and said she already had a bun in the oven. 17-year-old me was extremely overwhelmed and my parents didn't help much. Me and GF were silent for a long time before I said something stupid like adoption or abortion. Yeah, I was that guy. I had many excuses as to why I even suggested those 2 options to make myself sound good. But really I just didn't want my free life of little responsibilities to end so early. I ended up loving the little heathen and manned up, got a job, and it wasn't much later my GF cheated on me with my best buddy from school. She moved out and took him with. It was a miserable few months. It was only about 3 months ago that her relationship with that guy I used to be friends with had a falling out and she lost her job. She crawled back to me and I let her. Not because I wanted to try again with her. I despise her because the heartache she caused. It was so I can be with my son again, who is turning 2 in 1 month. TLDR. Didn't want child because I was an butthole and GF convinced me otherwise. Now love him more than anything and GF turned into a huge butthole who barely takes care of him. My time to shine. Junior year in HS I got my sophomore girlfriend pregnant. We found out on Christmas. So I ended up quitting baseball that summer and got me a job at an auto mechanic. Worked my senior year after school to support my son. I got all the questions from other students. How, why and what's next. I ended up getting more respect surprisingly. I had my history teacher keep me after class one day to talk. This lasted a good 3 periods, or 2 hours 15 minutes. Turned out he knocked up a one night stand and wanted to know how I coped with it. So pretty I stepped up to the plate. Still went to college and worked 40 hours a week. Started a business and became a company. Pushed myself beyond my limit and now I am laid up with organ issues. Ah yes, kids having kids. Based on my own personal experience, not advised. We got a place together. I worked 2 jobs and still graduated HS. Raising a child was new to me, and I was immature and selfish. We grew tired and within 3 years, we broke up. I paid all the child support and insurance, working 2 jobs like most of us. It was hard paying the bills and not being there to raise my daughter. The mother would not allow me to see or even correspond with my daughter. Later, I fought an expensive custody battle. We both lost with custody going to an aunt in the family. Thank you so very much. And it was then I was finally able to reunite with my daughter. Today, she's 29. I feel guilty every day for not being there, wondering what could have been. Do yourself a favor, wrap that rascal, maybe get a dog until you're truly ready to have kids. Imo, you start a new chapter in your life when you have children. It's a big deal, and the hardest job you'll ever do is be a good parent. Sorry it's long. Peace and love to you all. This was a long time ago. We found she was pregnant a couple of weeks before HS graduation. I immediately went into focus mode. I loved her. I knew I wanted a kid eventually, but it happened early. I don't remember much about how I felt besides being focused. I got a full-time job at a factory testing industrial-sized HVAC units and immediately enrolled in my local community college. Fortunately, she ended up having a miscarriage and we soon broke up. However, I always thank that experience for pushing me to get my crap together. In hindsight, I probably missed out on a lot of fun because I stayed in school and worked full-time, but everything turned out for the better because I'm a successful person. Been with the mother of my children for 7 years. Things are going fine. My mom and grandma were very supportive. My father wasn't around much and helped me while we both matured enough to live on our own. I love my children with everything I am. My story is maybe a bit different seeing as I wasn't the father of the baby. My now wife, who's 1 year older than me, was pregnant at 16, gave birth at 17. We started seeing each other when the baby was 1 year old. Now I'm 32, been happily married for 12 years and we have another daughter together, and I have adopted my eldest. As far as we are all concerned, she is my daughter through and through. Did I regret getting involved with this when I was young? Not in the slightest. You see, some people go through life traveling and going out every weekend, and if you have a good enough support network around you, there is nothing stopping you from doing the same. I'd also say it has really pushed me into self-improvement with regards careers etc, as I want to provide them with a happy life and not having to worry about putting food on the table, unlike my own childhood. Obligatory not me but my friend. He had a kid with an senior in high school when he was 14. She was 18. He's had 3 more since then. All of them are in his custody. 2 of them are with the woman is currently with. He and I are almost 30. His kid, his oldest, is gonna be learning to drive soon. My oldest is almost 3. His family helped him out tremendously. He got his GED, learned how to weld, and has a decent career now. I'd say his life is turning out well. Scared shitless, and to make it even harder, twins. But it all worked out. Adoption was never an option. We were gonna do it one way or another. Today they are 4 and the best thing that has happened to us. Wouldn't change a thing. She told me she had a son and then told me she wanted me to have nothing to do with the kid's life and cut me off there. I was 14 at the time and she was my age, give or take some months, and though I was too immature to keep going and try to help. So it was just left at that. I can play this game to an extent. Got her FWB pregnant 2 years ago. When she first told me, I was trying to get my life to a better point. I was working at Panera making minimum wage and I still lived with my parents. I looked for better jobs. I looked for apartments and I tried being there for her. To cut a long story short, she eventually aborted it without telling me and had me jumped after. What is my life like now? Well, I still don't have a kid, but for a while there I was in a numbed daze to everything. I used people. I constantly got high and drunk. Every day was a party to me. I continued to hook up. Even when she told me she was pregnant, I went to a party at a local uni and I hooked up with a girl there in the same day. For 2 years I didn't trust any girl I met. I went from dating because it's one of my favorite things to do to only hooking up with them. Something I hated doing. I was scared they'd hurt me. I still am. During the 2 years after, I was a toxic person. Toxic to everyone around me. I'd rather get laid and go out party than find a better job, grow and enjoy other parts of life. I saw I was heading down a bad road. I moved into a place with crappy roommates that are still on that road. I eventually had an epiphany. I got my crap together. I don't have a crappy job anymore. I actually just got hired at the local rehab center and currently I work with people that have disabilities. I have a great girlfriend who I love very much and actually enjoy my life for once in the 21, almost 22 years I've been alive. At 18 I had been dating this girl for about 5-6 months and had a very good relationship. We got along great and we also had sex every chance we got, which was a lot since we spent the night with each other almost every night of the week. She was on the pill, but one week she couldn't get her refill like she was supposed to. During that week we still had sex but pulled out. One night I didn't get all the way out in time and a few weeks later she didn't get her period. Something in me just knew what conversation was coming next. She told me a couple of days later she had taken 2 pregnancy tests and both came back positive. It was a hard time and an awkward time telling her parents and my parents. We decided that we both would be there when we told both sets of soon-to-be grandparents. After the initial shock, everyone was excited. We were already planning on getting married, but we pushed it up a few months. We got pregnant in October, November and got married in February, less than 1 year after we first started dating. That was 10 years ago this past the 17th of February, and we are still married and going strong. My son is 9 and will turn 10 in June. He is the most awesome little guy ever. He is smart, funny, and to be honest sometimes a little smartus. Haha. We have a little girl now too who will turn 5 in June also. So what seemed like the end of the world 10 years ago turned into the greatest thing that's ever happened. We have a great little family, and as far as I can tell will continue to be going strong 10-20 years from now. Hope this answered your question sufficiently. That's awesome. Glad to see it turned out great for you. Daughter is 9, almost 10. We had her when we were 18-19. She ended up being medically handicapped from a rare condition. Wheelchair, ventilator, G-tube, etc. I went to school while her mom stayed home with a nurse and my mother. It was quite an arduous journey, in and out of the hospital over the years. She's very healthy today. We ended up getting divorced last year by her choice, although we are all better off now. Our daughter lives with me. I have a 6-figure salary job in IT and do real estate house flips on the side. I guess it was kinda destined. I was 18 and she was 17. When I met her, she wasn't living with her parents and really had nowhere to go, so I asked my parents if she could stay with us. Of course they said no, but eventually they said only if her parents were okay with it. Fast forward a couple months later and I told my mom she was pregnant. Like every other parent of a future teenage parent, they were disappointed but happy. In the end we lasted around 6 years together before she called it quits. Still in the kid's life though, and my parents are still happy with their grandchild. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.